41 is open at 1860 West Mason in Green Bay. You're invited to indulge in one of life's simplest pleasures, a great burger. We're grilling up 15 fresh signature burgers and have over 30 craft beers for the perfect pairing. Experience Wisconsin's best flavors, including white cheddar cheese curds, a variety of specialty sandwiches, milkshakes, and gourmet frozen custard. Burger House 41 at 1860 West Mason is open at 11 a.m. daily. Taste Wisconsin. Taste amazing.
Would you like to experience being one of the free people who produce their own meat and eggs? PurelyPoultry.com has both the chickens and supplies you need to raise your own poultry.
Would you like pets who produce eggs you can barter with? Your own source of clean meat?
A swan on your pond to make your home strikingly beautiful?
How about some pheasants and quail roaming in your woods for enjoyment? If so, check out PurelyPoultry.com.
6%? 7%? That's a lot of money. I might as well just do it myself. Well, that might be true, if a lot of that money you're paying a real estate broker is going toward outdated methods, unnecessary fancy offices, and overpaying executives for a lifetime of service. But you don't need to go that route. Silver Compass Realty is a full-service real estate brokerage serving all of South Central Wisconsin, and the commission is negotiable. Silver Compass will explain exactly what they're going to do to help you buy or sell a home, how that will help you reach your goals, and stand right beside you every step of the way. They want to be your broker, your expert, even when you're not in the middle of a transaction. Silver Compass Realty, helping you find your way home. Contact them today at silvercompassrealty.com or call 608-361-8608. Silver Compass Realty, helping you find your way home. And we're back. The Free People Show at freepeopleshow.com, continuing our conversation with co-host Miles Kristen and our guest Adam Kokesh. So the question we asked before the break was talking about communicating with people in the context of, number one, on one side, bedrock libertarian humane principles, and on the other side, being engaged in a political exercise where you're trying to get votes, I assume. So you want to go ahead and address that, Adam?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, if I can't reach people with principle, but my policies are based on principle that immediately makes life better for everyone except those who are illegitimately profiting from the current system, of course, then it's easy to communicate that. Even if my philosophical principles don't convert them to thinking for themselves, don't convert them to an understanding of freedom as an ethical principle, that it's based, you're free when no one is doing anything unethical to you, right? The moment someone is using violence against you or stealing from you, you're not free. So if you're a conservative or you're a liberal and you live in a conservative or a liberal state or community, would you rather be governed if you feel that you need to be governed, if you feel that you should not actually be free and have your rights as a human being respected, if you don't agree with that, you think you need to be governed, okay. Would you rather be governed locally where your vote and your voice have a chance of mattering, or would you rather be governed by someone in the far-off capital of Washington, D.C., governed by bureaucrats, controlled by lobbyists, and not set up to work in your best interest in any way whatsoever? Which would you rather have?
That's a fantastic point. That's a fantastic point. And I actually think what you're getting into now a little bit, and believe me, I am a radical to the core by soul in terms of the libertarian definition of radical. We tend to try to coexist with the pragmatists in our party and try to keep mindful that we're pulling in the same direction. And that's the argument that you just made is the same argument that a lot of pragmatists make, that we need to suggest things that will be less uncomfortable for people, less far outside their way of already thinking about our government and what they think it's doing for them. Of course, they're mistaken about that, in order to at least get them pointed in the right direction.
When pragmatism is used as a rationale for doing something unprincipled, it is no longer pragmatism. It is anti-pragmatism because it is always impractical to compromise your principles.
So the example that you used to talk to people about having more local accountability, more decisions made on the local level, would you characterize that as principled pragmatism? or not pragmatism at all?
I mean, it's just applying principles in the most pragmatic way possible. That is consistently and radically, and radical means striking at the root of the problem, not dancing around it.
Exactly. I think we're on the same wavelength about that. And that's how we have the Libertarian Party of Wisconsin convention coming this weekend, where they'll be wrestling over that sort of thing, and people that supposedly belong to one camp or the other. But I agree with you in that the definition of pragmatism within the Libertarian Party, within the Liberty Movement, is only legitimate insofar as advancing the principles which the radicals are defending. So, given that, Miles has a question for you now. I've been doing all the talking. Miles?
Well, okay, first we gotta just go back to something we just talked about community control, which is very interesting because I know a lot of the people who I've been listening to, and a lot of activist friends of mine are very concerned about the police in America and so forth. And one thing that I've heard a lot is that we need community control of the police. And this is a concern of a lot of people in America who have been involved with Black Lives Matter and so forth. And so I see things like that, and I think about the connection that could be the connection that can be made between libertarians and a lot of people out there right now protesting. So before I get to my other question, your thoughts on the people in the community having a say on the way they are policed in general.
Oh, that's such an awesome question. I love getting into stuff like this. I hope it doesn't get too wonky, because I'm big on all the ways that we can apply these principles to create totally new economic mechanisms to deliver public safety services way more efficiently, way more in line with the needs of the people who are being served. And anytime you put government in between a service provider and a service receiver, you're going to have a huge compromise in the effectiveness of those services, the delivery, the price, and the opportunity for corruption, obviously, that doesn't exist when you don't have that middleman and you don't have the government stifling competition. So practically speaking, moving forward, we're going to be so much less violent as a society when we stop doing the drug war, when we get rid of all of the economic suppression that leads to poverty and desperation that leads people to commit crimes. So, you get government down to the county level already. You've eliminated, not just all, 90+% of the government violence, which is 90+% of the violence in the world as a whole is done in the name of government. I would make the case that because of the war on drugs and the war on poverty, you're going to get rid of another 9%. You're going to be at like a 1% level of social violence at that point, and we're going to have a lot of resources to be able to go into addressing it from a more justice and restorative analysis rather than a punitive system like we have today. In our legal system, it's not a justice system. That's a joke to call it that. We have a criminal punishment system. It punishes people for doing behavior that government doesn't like, and it punishes, real crimes only to give it credibility so that it can punish non-crimes and do it in a way that doesn't give justice to the victims, doesn't make victims whole. In fact, it further victimizes them as taxpayers. So what I'd like to see is that when we get government down to the county level, you have law enforcement down to the county level. Of course, you'll have service providers of private security services that are able to cross county borders. But I think the mainstay of the county sheriff's department as an office that is elected directly by the people. So already it's a little bit better than most law enforcement agencies, because a sheriff is much more generally electable, electorally accountable than most other serious law enforcement positions. And I think when you get to the county level, you're going to see law enforcement consolidate around these county agencies, and they're eventually going to have to transition into private organizations when they're not allowed to tax people anymore, and that is because taxation is theft, and we don't allow that. But they're going to be able to make that transition. There's going to be competitors, and it's going to be a pretty easy, orderly transition, mainly because there's going to be so much less crime. I mean, just obviously, when you eliminate all the laws that criminalize behavior that's not unethical in any way, remove a huge burden from the public safety and justice system that we have in the world in general. So in the United States, this is huge. You know, we have the drug war. We have so many people in jail with that for victimless crimes, things that there shouldn't be any prohibitions against. You know, we have you look at the deaths of cops. You know, what does that cost? Well, in Prohibition era in the United States, almost 100 years ago, there were 300 deaths per year for officers, and that was like a huge spike at the time. People were shocked, and it didn't go up again until to that level until the war on drugs got going decades later. So we're going to see, a huge reduction in the need for those services. We're going to see them connected to the community, and we're going to see them opened up to competition when they're, when they're funded voluntarily.
That's an awesome answer. So basically, by getting things in order in that regard, in some ways, we don't have to forcefully remove government. We can remove the need for it as well.
Right. Well, removing the war on drugs it's a huge chunk of the government racket, and it has huge implications. You know, I just got out of jail after doing a week here in D.C.
More about that.
That was Miles's next question.
What happened?
He's upset that you got jailed again, so we need to know why.
Yeah. Well, I just got rolled up in front of the White House right before a protest was going to start on a bogus warrant that should have never existed in the first place. You might have said they made a mistake at some point, but it's a lot of interesting timing and funny coincidences of mistakes that made this happen. So anyway, when I was in jail, and I've been in jail, I've been arrested a few dozen times. I've been in jail maybe half a dozen or a dozen times out of that.
How many times have you been detained and then immediately how many times have you been detained and immediately released?
Yeah, that's the majority of them. Or remember during the anti-war movement heyday here in D.C., we would get arrested and they would take us to a warehouse and process us for tickets, and it was give us $50 and you can get out. They call it cite and release.
Yes.
Just because they need an excuse to remove protesters from an area, so they'll protest demonstrating without a permit or unlawful gathering or whatever excuse they come up with. So a lot of my arrests are really pretty minor, but I've done overnights I did 4 months, I did a week once, I did another week. I've done 2 or 3 weekends, and a handful of overnights, maybe a dozen times I've done altogether overnights. But it's different when you go to jail in D.C. and there's 100 dudes on the block and I'm the only white dude, and you go, you know what? There's something wrong here, and the majority of them, and I don't want to get into the all the racism argument one way or another here, but it doesn't matter if they're black or not. Most of them are in for nonviolent crimes. Most of them are in for victimless crimes, even drug violations, probation violations, things like that, and it's just. It's a racket. It's just, and the thing is, you realize that, I'm really lucky, not just because I'm white and white privilege and all that. And believe me, there is a lot of that in just, in the jail system, in the legal system. And I've experienced it, and maybe white privilege is, I don't even want to argue that because there's a lot of arguments for and against different elements of that, that concept. But I'm really lucky in the sense that I'm an independent actor, entrepreneur. I make money with YouTube, with my book sales. My book's free in every digital format, of course, including audiobook, but we sell paper copies as close to what cost as possible. Then I make a little money from the merch that goes with that, and I get a little money from YouTube, and people donate to support me. So it's not like having a felony on my record affects my employability. But for a lot of these guys, it's like you get rolled up for some stupid thing on a weekend, and you miss work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Well, now you're out of a job, and now what are you going to do? Well, you're going to go sell drugs. It's easier to start selling drugs than to start driving Uber. So that's where a lot of these guys find themselves in this position, hugely disadvantaged in life in a way that I think most people don't even appreciate if they've never experienced it or had a family member experience it, how much that really sets you back and is a huge untold economic burden on society when the productive capacity of all these people is stolen from us by government, and not just stolen from us in the time that they serve in jail, but the productive capacity that they are now prevented from fully providing for other people.